one of the families said, even at the Catholic school, like there's this competition now, even among the kids. And like if their kids wore cowboy boots to school, which you're allowed to do, if you wear cowboy boots, it's considered déclassé. And I don't know if you know this, but we live in Idaho. It's a rural state. Like wearing cowboy boots should not be a shocking thing. And if your kids are getting embarrassed for wearing cowboy boots, there's an illness in your parish. I don't know if it's in ours, but I'm still going to talk about it. Your self-worth does not come from what kind of car you drive or what labels you're wearing. If it is, there's a sickness among us. And the antidote is humility. You can't have a great community if you don't have some humility. This sounds kind of strange. I'm quite serious on that. And not just like psychologically, they've done studies. You can't have community or even a great marriage if somebody's ego is running out of control. And they did these studies, and I think I mentioned this to you, but I just love it. One example is in sports. If you want a great team, you have to tap down people's ego. And the example is, if you remember several years ago, the Miami Heat had the three kings, LeBron James, and when they announced it, they had this mega party with thousands of people and the three kings, and they had fireworks going off. Anybody else see that besides me? Okay, 2 people, that's it, Marie and some guy over there. I've mentioned this to you before. If you're not watching enough TV, you're not going to make it to heaven. But it was a stunning event, right? Fireworks, this whole thing. And LeBron James says, because now they have the 3 best basketball players, LeBron James says, quote unquote, winning is going to be so easy. Well, the problem is, even with the best players, winning wasn't that easy. They didn't win. And what they did is this amazing thing. They brought on this player, and nobody really knows who he is. His name is Shane Battier. He's known as Batman. And he is a great basketball player. In 6th grade, he was 6 foot tall. Isn't that amazing? In 8th grade, he was 6'8". In 8th grade. So, like in his state, he won high school outstanding athlete, national collegiate athlete. But in the NBA, it's a lot tougher competition. And he really wasn't a star. He was a role player. But here's what they noticed statistically. When Shane is on a team, actually the team is winning. And even Shane gives this great interview. You know what he brings to the team? Humility. It sounds kind of strange, but he keeps people's ego in check. Yes, he's a good basketball player, but he also changes. He doesn't make them better basketball players. He makes them a better team. And that's what humility does. And they've actually found that out. It doesn't matter what it is, basketball players, or they did the same thing with Wall Street investors, and they took the all-star Wall Street investors and they put them on one team, and logically you kind of think, gosh, if you have all the highest producing people, it's really going to knock it out. It did less than. The problem is that if you have all these big egos in one room, you can't form a solid team. That you have to have humility. It doesn't matter if it's a team or Wall Street investing or a marriage, or I'd like to say even a parish. If your ego, if everybody thinks they're an all-star, needs to be the center of attention, what you don't have is solidarity. You don't have a good team. You don't have a community. And if you're wondering, why is he going off on that? Well, because I go off on things. And it's a theme of, obviously, the first reading and the gospel. The need for humility. And Sirach, the book of Sirach, it's in the Old Testament, love it. It's just a book of wisdom. In fact, Sirach, his name was, we'd say Jesus ben Sirach. He's a grandfather. And his grandson writes down all his grandfather's wisdom. That's where it comes from. And his grandfather has a lot of really wise things to say. And one of his parting advice to his grandchildren is practice humility. If you practice humility, it's a power you want. Then God can teach you if you have humility. And so humility, it's a power that saves you. Humility, by the way, is not having low self-esteem. Humility is low preoccupation. The word humility is the same word as from the earth, humus. It means you're bound to the earth. You have balance to your life. It's not low self-esteem. It's low self-absorption. You're more in love with other people than yourself. You don't have to be the center of attention. So Sirach says to his grandchildren, writes this down, that no, you want that power of humility. Then what it gives you is that you can be taught by God. You can recognize God. And with humility, you can really form a good family and a good community. And in the Hebrew, I love this. What it allows, if you practice humility, the Hebrew word is hokmah, and what it means is like artistic beauty. With humility, you're allowed to see the artistic beauty in other people, whether they be the poor or the cripple or the special needs child. When you look at humanity, you can see how they are an artistic creation. You can see what's beautiful in them. That's why Jesus in today's gospel says, when you have a meal, don't invite your wealthy friends who's going to pay you back. That's just ego. You want to invite everybody. You can see the beauty in the poor, the rejected, the cripple. You see beauty in everyone. That's what humility gives us. So, I have to say, Sirach's advice is very wise, and we need it, especially today. Even so on Monday, I was visiting with one of my friends, and we were talking, and their daughter is dating somebody, and I'm an idiot, so I never remember anybody. And they said, oh, yeah, you know the family. And I said, oh. So they pulled up a website with his pictures on it, and said, this is the character. So it has all his pictures, and all his pictures are selfies. And you don't see a big red flag there? How come there's not pictures of his family? Or really? That's a huge red flag. I think our society, not just some parishes, but we're becoming self-obsessed. The real beauty in life is not when the pictures are all about you, but when you can see the beauty in your parents and grandparents and other people. That takes the gift of humility. Like Sirach, you want that power. And so in the gospel, Jesus, once again, it's always about a meal in the Gospel of Luke. Jesus loves food. And he's at a meal, and he can see how the Pharisees, they're all pushing to get the center of attention. And the joke about that is that these Pharisees are the super religious, and they can't even recognize God sitting in their midst because they're so obsessed about making sure they get the best seats. Sirach is right. You can't learn anything from God. You can't even recognize God without humility. You can't even recognize other people. All they're concerned about is themselves. And so they're just clawing for the best seats. And so Jesus tells this parable about a wedding feast. Once again, a meal. And in case you missed it, heaven is always pictured as a wedding feast. We get married here on earth. That's what baptism and Eucharist is about, is a wedding ceremony. And then when you die, heaven is a great party. So there's this wedding feast. And in the wedding feast, heaven's this wedding feast. Now, here's the odd part. To enjoy the wedding feast, you need humility. For you to enjoy heaven, you have to have humility. Otherwise, you'll be like the person who's trying to get the best seat. You could actually look into heaven and still not get what heaven is about. So this sounds kind of strange. To get into heaven, I don't know if you know this, but you need the word humility written across your forehead. 2 places in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, it says all those in heaven have humility written on their forehead. So here's the question to you. When, and I actually mean this, when was humility written on your forehead? In the Catholic Church, it was done specifically at one time in your life. Anybody know? Because we're not going past this unless you get the right answer. And I'll give it to you. It's at baptism. The word humility is it's the Greek letter for tau. It looks like a T. And it says the tau, and just to explain, tau symbolized in ancient times humility. And all those in heaven have humility, the tau, written on their forehead. So if you were a baby, just go with me on this. We'll go with you. If you were a baby, when you were baptized, the first thing your parents and godparents and the priest did is make the sign of the cross on your forehead. You had the tau written on your forehead. You're marked out as a citizen of heaven. When we celebrate Mass and the Gospel is read, did you notice we trace the sign of the cross first on our forehead? If heaven is a great feast of all those who are humble, we're praying that it's written on our forehead. And when you die in the last rites, you know what the priest does? He puts the tau on your forehead, marking you as a citizen of heaven. Now, if the symbol symbolizes that we're humble, we should spend our life that way. We don't have to spend our life making sure everybody notices us. It won't prepare us for the great feast. It won't prepare us to see the beauty in other people's lives. And so this is ritually, we practice it every weekend. Our lives started that way, it'll end that way. It should fill up everything in between. So this is what I'm actually kind of asking. If that's what we symbolize ritually, then what I ask is parents and godparents, or grandparents, discuss this with your kids. Be like Sirach, the grandfather. Give your kids some wisdom and say, listen, let's talk about ego. If all your pictures or selfies are just of yourself, you're setting yourself up for failure. What you need is to be able to work in a team, in a community. Ego, run amok, will destroy a community. It'll destroy your weddings. So discuss with them. You don't need a car or a label to give you importance. What you need is love. What you need is humility, that you're struck with the beauty of all people. If your car or purse or labels give you some sort of self-worth, then you really have none. Your self-worth should come from really your connection to other people and God. I say, be like Sirach. Discuss it. Be like Shane Bertier. I just messed up his name. Batman, whom really doesn't make you a better player, just makes the world a better place. That's what we're supposed to be. We're preparing for the great feast by practicing humility now. And so, together, let us stand and profess our faith.